Now, there's one thing I don't like to do, and that is misinterpret my opinion or what I'm trying to say to people. And I thought I would clarify my coronavirus video because some people definitely took it a different route, and I don't blame them because it could definitely be taken from a totally different position from what I was trying to display. And I'm the one at fault here. It's not their fault for interpreting it differently. It's definitely my fault. So let me explain exactly what I was getting at in the jux of this video, or I'm not sure that's the proper word for that, but let me explain what I was trying to get at here. So I was saying let's get real about coronavirus. When I made this video, we only had about 2 to 3,000 confirmed cases and a few hundred deaths, and I was like trying to instill this patience. Let's be patient. I don't believe that we should fear this at all, especially here in the United States. Not in China either. I was like, even if you're in China, be patient. Don't fear. Fear doesn't get us anywhere. Even if there is a legitimate cause for concern, fear doesn't actually help you in that situation. You have to stop, think calmly, clearly, and assess the situation. Like, there was an example in my life just yesterday. there there was a fire in my home, and instead of panicking and not worrying what to do, I was standing there looking at the fire and was thinking about this because it was a grease fire, and I knew that if I threw water on it, it wouldn't work. If I threw different things on it, it just would make the situation worse. So it was only like about 30 seconds. So I'm not saying that I just stood there and watched my house burn down or anything like that. But I stood there and just was calmly thinking, okay, what do I need to do? Fire needs oxygen. So how do I get rid of that oxygen? Smother it. So I took a thick blanket and smothered the fire. So that was my calm uh, reaction to that. Now, this is the same way I approach coronavirus because the the government is always shouting fire, fire, fear, fear, this, and they get an innate response from us. They try to use us and manipulate us through our innate fear to want to survive. That's what humans want to do. They don't want to die and not exist anymore. So it's a very simple concept. But sometimes in the face of that fire, your natural instinct is not going to help you. Yeah, when you see fire, your natural instinct is water, because water puts out fire for the most part. But in the case of a grease fire, you throw water on that fire, you just exacerbated the entire situation and possibly made it much worse. So all I was stating with this video was to we've seen this before. Let's slow down. Let's not jump to conclusions, and let's not feed into what our governments are wanting us to do. Now, that being stated, I need to clarify that I am not a scientist. I am not a medical doctor, and I do not have any sort of degree in epidemiology, and I am not an expert on that. So, I am just a regular person just like most of you, and I am not claiming to be any of the sort. That is just my honest opinion. I have to clarify that, and I want to make that very clear to everyone. I am not an expert on the situation. I just have to go off the information that I have to work with. So that was my conclusion, and some people were very critical of that, and that's great because I can get things wrong. Now, with that being stated, this situation in China could be very dramatic. It could lead to a pandemic, which is something I want to get to. It could be. Now, that being stated, so could all these other epidemics that we faced over the past decade or so. All of these could have been in that same category. But after time passed, it wasn't, and nothing has really happened from that. But the same thing is here. It's there. It's a possibility. So I have to be very clear that that threat is real. Now, I want to make something very clear here as well. The threat seems to be directed. And obviously, if it's being directed at anyone, who is it being directed at? China. China is the biggest recipient of all the negative effects from this. So when we look at China, they have been hit with a nonstop stream of epidemics recently, and whether it's this African swine flu, which, if you look at African swine flu, it knocked out a major population of their pigs because they had to kill them off to stop the spread of that virus. So that was a big recent issue that started in like 2018 and pushed into 2019, I believe. And then recently, now they're stating that they're facing bird flu, and bird flu is something they've also been facing prior to this, but now they're saying it's a re-outbreaking near Wuhan, where this said novel coronavirus was spreading from. So when you look at this compounding situation, this is a major blow to China, because not only is their food supply being hit massively, so is their, even if, like I stated, if we wait and see, the mortality rate could be much lower or much higher. Those are both possibilities, because the symptoms are so similar to, say, the common flu and other emphysema diseases that affect the respiratory system. They're so similar that we don't know until after the people die how deadly this thing really is. And another thing is China isn't necessarily equipped to handle so many epidemics one after another. Bang, bang, bang. These are very almost seemingly directed attacks. And if you think about it, Wuhan is the center for all these diseases, where they're coming from, because they have a level 4 facility which is enabled to house and operate and do experiments on these viruses. And there has been foreign governments, including China, including Canada, sending them viruses, including the coronavirus as well. So if you really think about it, and I've heard other stories, and I can't confirm or deny these right now because I'm still looking for sources on all of this. And like I said, I really want to slow down and take everything with a grain of salt. But it's possible that there could have been some inside job stuff going on that led to these outbreaks because of the people at these facilities, and possibly around it, or the framing of these people in these facilities. There's a number of different things when you have outside governments such as the United States at a war with you, at a trade war, because China, and I did a video on this, how China has been stepping up in the playing field, and they've were trying to, or are acquiring oil assets from different countries such as Iraq, while Iraq is trying to force the United States out of their country. And the U.S. doesn't like this. The U.S. doesn't like this. Israel doesn't like this. All these other countries that are benefiting from holding their standpoint on oil in the world, and their oil reserve currency, and being able to control that market, they don't like it when another country, another foreign power such as Russia, or especially China in this case, comes in and interferes in that. So there are major consequences, and the Soleimani assassination, as I point out, and that is almost directly a result of China's pushing of influence inside Iraq, because Iraq is looking for an alternative, because the United States has bit them so hard through what they've done to their country. So it's almost like a natural response to things. So it's almost beyond coincidence that all of these viruses and spread and pandemics, or possible pandemics, are happening inside of China, and they're stemming from the very places where these viruses are being sent to be studied, in China, in Wuhan. So you really have to stop and question yourself. Is this almost like a false flag or a real attack on China from foreign governments, possibly the United States? The motive is there. Now we're just waiting for the evidence to fill that. Now, as far as concerns outside of China, because they have a real reason to be concerned, legitimately, because they keep getting compounded with several viruses, and their economy is going to suffer, even if it is more mundane than everybody and their mother is making it out to be. They're suffering. Their economy is going to suffer, and work is going to come to a standstill because everybody is either sick or in fear of getting sick, so they don't want to show up to work. Because that's how it works. Panic, fear. You spread, you cripple an economy, you cripple a nation, and then all of a sudden they can't compete with you on the playing field. But a real concern in the United States is that if the World Health Organization or the UN or whoever makes this decision, calls this a pandemic, then they're enabling all these other countries to enact martial law type laws. I don't know what they're called in all the other countries, but in the United States it's called martial law, where they can institute military control through the government. And they can quarantine and do things that we're seeing in China. And other than the fact that that's going against your natural rights and the Constitution, that's how you implement whatever plan and action you want to in the government, if you're a corrupt government, to carry it out, to say gun control or crack down on freedom of speech, or a certain group of people you want to crack down on. That's how you do all that. That's how you implement that. So there is a legitimate concern when you see that from a potential pandemic, if that is announced, then all of a sudden your constitutions, your rights are thrown out the window, and they can enact any kind of military enforcement that they please. All of those things that your forefathers fought for, well, doesn't mean anything because you're at risk of carrying and spreading this disease that, oh, and it could be innate for 14 days to a month. So we don't know for sure. So we're going to have to quarantine you, round you up in concentration camps. And you know how that spiel goes. So I just really wanted to clarify all of this because, again, I don't mean to misinterpret or be something that I'm not. And I never wanted to come across as some kind of expert on viruses and trying to make you think that there's zero threat, that this is just the regular flu and it's actually less than the regular flu and you're not going to get harmed. I may have misconstrued that through the way I was doing it, and I apologize for that. So that's going to be all for now. If you appreciate the work I do here and want to continue to see this grow, head on down to the links in the description below and send me a buck or two. Continue to keep your eyes open. And as always, this has been Tyranny Unmasked.